Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weekly Dharma Gathering. My name is Sheena Brockington. Tonight's session, Love and Fear During Times of War, will be led by Lama Owens. Lama Owens will lead us through a guided meditation, a Dharma talk, and we'll close with a Q&A. Tonight's session will be recorded, so if you'd prefer not to be seen, please turn off your camera feature. Please note that you will also be recorded when asking a question. If you have a question during the guided instruction or the talk, please feel free to enter it into the chat box at any time, and we'll be able to address it during the discussion period. The recording of tonight's gathering can be accessed within 48 hours via your purchased products on your Vimeo Weekly Dharma Gathering account. You will receive an email notification once it's posted. And I will just start by reading Lama Owens' bio, and then we will move into a guided meditation. Considered one of the leaders of the next generation of Dharma teachers, Lama Owens has a blend of formal Buddhist training and life experience that gives him a unique ability to understand, relate, and engage with those around him in a way that's spacious and sincere. His gentle, laid-back demeanor and willingness to bare his heart and soul makes others want to do the same. Even when seated in front of a room, he's next to you, sharing his stories and struggles with an openness, vulnerability, and gentle humor that makes you genuinely feel good about who you are with all your flaws and foibles. You're lovable and deserving of happiness and joy. He invites you into the cross sections of his life as a Black queer male born and raised in the South and heavily influenced by the church and its community. Through his lens, you catch glimpses of your own often conflicting identities. Through it all, he weaves in time-tested traditional Buddhist principles and practices that give listeners real tools for healing and evolution. With grace and humility, he doesn't claim to have answers, and he merely poses questions and encourages conversation so that others may find their own truth. Lama delivers his knowledge in a way that says, "I'm just like you, no better and no worse." He reminds you that he too is human and a work in progress. He asks audiences to call him out if he says anything that is perpetuating misogyny, racism, or anything divisive. Lama has done and continues to do his own work every day, and it's palpable. Lama Owens was officially recognized by the Keju School of Tibetan Buddhism after receiving his teaching authorization from his root teacher, the Venerable Lama Norla Rinpoche, when he completed the traditional 3-year silent retreat program at KTC Monastery outside of New York City. It was during this time he dealt with years of past pain and trauma and found forgiveness and compassion for himself, what he views as a critical step before truly being able to help others. Since coming out of retreat, he has completed his Master of Divinity degree at Harvard Divinity School. Lama also practices, studies, and teaches secular mindfulness and is a teacher with Inward Bound Mindfulness Education, where he is also a faculty member for the organization's teacher training program. He is also heavily engaged in social change activism. He previously released a book with Reverend Angel Kiyato Williams and Jasmine Sadula entitled Radical Dharma, Talking Race, Love, and Liberation. In June 2020, he releases his new book, Love and Rage, The Path of Liberation Through Anger. Lama Owens, please teach us.
Ooh, awesome. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Thank you to everyone who is joining in and who will be looking at this teaching, following this teaching after it's recorded. I'm so happy to be here and so really honored to be offering Dharma, to be offering this teaching for everyone right now. Today I'm particularly, I feel really good because I voted today in primaries and early voting, which, makes me feel good to participate in this act of democracy. But even more than that, I feel particularly good because my skin is looking really well today. Actually, I went to Target and was shopping around, and this guy came up to me. He was like, "Oh, your skin is like beautiful, and your lineup and your edges is great. You really take care of your skin." And I was just really flattered to hear that, because I'm like most ladies, I enjoy a good compliment, and the compliment was given with no expectation of reciprocation. It was just like a passing comment, and the guy passed on. I was like, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for making my day wonderful and special. So I just want to tack that on to my bio as well. But this topic of love and fear in times of war, for me, is becoming very much a central teaching. I believe that we're entering into, and have been in this period of an apocalypse. And for me, apocalypse actually doesn't mean the end of anything, but apocalypse means the revelation of truth. It means unveiling. It means falling away. And so we're being introduced to the truth of how things really are. And we are presented with options in terms of how to relate to that. We can either choose to enter into relationship with the truth of things. And as we enter into that relationship with truth, then it's going to get, super messy, super uncomfortable. And we're going to enter into a process of transformation as we grapple with the truth. The second option is we actually don't bother with entering into relationship with the truth, and then we continue to live in our own worlds and our own narratives. And I think that when we make these choices, the people who have made a choice to engage with the truth and the people who have made a choice to not engage with the truth, there will be a particular space that begins to open up in between these two groups. I think the space is what we're beginning to experience in terms of not being able to communicate with people with different beliefs, how we're struggling to see, to empathize with folks who have different views than us, and I think that's a gap that will get wider and wider. And I think over time, there will be a future when we will lose the ability to actually to communicate with people, well, not just to communicate, but actually to see people who hold different views. I'm actually beginning to see that the ways in which we discount, ignore, bypass people with different views right now, I think that's becoming more and more a reality for us. And so a lot of this has to do with fear. It's about, confronting something that we're habitually trying to avoid, that we're trying to push away. And this war, when I talk about war, when I think about war, it's not actual physical war, but it can be actual physical war. But this war is also a conflict that we're experiencing in our experience, we're experiencing in our relationships to others. This conflict is based upon our unwillingness to deeply empathize and to give rise to compassion from that deep empathy. That conflict, that war, comes from the ways in which we shut down and we, essentially collapse into ourselves, and we are no longer interested in the experiences of others because we're really not that interested in our own experiences, And again, the heart of so much of this is fear. So this is something that I find that I am speaking about quite often. This is something that people are asking me about quite often. And my next book, Love and Rage, coming out in June, really explores all these issues of love and rage and anger and apocalypse and compassion and love and sex and heartbrokenness and suffering and trauma. All these things that, seem really confusing and overwhelming. I think this is the time for us to go really deeply into relationship with those things. For me, fear is something that I am learning more and more to consume. Uh, and because if I don't consume the fear will actually consume me. If I don't consume the apathy, the numbness, the hate, then all those things will consume me. And we have the ability to consume these really intense experiences of our minds, of our mental states. And that consumption is really about our taking refuge in the natural, innate experience of spaciousness within our minds, and that spaciousness helps us to hold all the things because it's impossible for anything to overwhelm our minds. Our minds are essentially the nature of everything. And so when I'm experiencing fear, I tell myself, oh, this fear is actually not bigger than my mind. This fear is my mind. And so when I have that realization, I'm able to enter into a liberatory relationship with the fear in which I begin to use that realization to liberate that fear, to liberate my belief that this fear is static, that is unchanging, that it is permanent. All of that is a lie and is actually anti-dharmic. We could say that's anti-dharmic, anti-wisdom. The wisdom and dharma of the situation is that nothing that I experience, feel, taste, touch, hear is outside of my mind. Everything is my mind. And when I have that thought, I am beginning to enter into liberation from fear, and I'm beginning actually to enter into love, because love is this deep acceptance of what is this deep allowance for everything to have its place in our experience. We have to kind of bypass this infantile, childish relationship to love that equates love with liking, because if you're continuing to equate love with liking, then you'll never be free. But when we start to understand love is about acceptance, love is about allowing things to be there. Love is about this intense, radical, revolutionary wish for things to be happy, for things to exist and abide within a state of equilibrium, to exist and abide within a state of being held, being cared for by spaciousness. Then we enter into this, you know, we enter into what I can only call just like ultimate, unsaturated, unsurpassable enlightenment. Um, and it's easy to get lost to this kind of truth. It's easy to forget this truth as well. And this is something that um, we have to rely on our teachers to remind us of, our mentors, our guides, our elders, our wise people, our shamans, our priests, anyone in our lives who occupies this position of, this position that's the intersection of love and wisdom. We have to rely on these beings, these people to remind us of who we are and what we are and the nature of our minds. And we also have to rely on the Dharma itself, this expression of clarity, of wisdom, the truth. We rely on that, and then we rely on the Sangha, we rely on our community, we rely on the collective to constantly offer us feedback on our work around getting free, getting out of this. This is extremely important that we have these sources of refuge. And, I often tell people that we can actually add more sources of refuge to help us to continue to deepen to understand our relationship to some of these really strong things in our experiences. you know so I want to just offer just a short practice for us before we enter into question and answer and discussion. And this is a practice that I like to do, quite often. I have a tool bag of practices that I pull from, and you can never have enough practices. However, though I say you can't have enough practices, I also believe that you should also have the patience, the resiliency, and the effort and diligence to commit yourself to really deepening individual practices as well. So like really committing to developing individual practices. So these practices can be fully developed and realized and ready for when we need it. So it's not the case that we just kind of cycle through all these practices. It's about just sticking with one practice and really digging into it and really working with it. you know so so let's begin. Let's enter into the practice. We're gonna This may be about 10 to 15 minutes. um and so when I begin formal practice, it's so important for me to check in with my body, and to first of all check in to see if my body is ready to be seen, to be noticed. And so I do that kind of introductory kind of glancing of my body, and when my body is ready to be seen, then I enter into an awareness with my body, and I ask it, how do you want to be right now? How do you need to be? And I allow my body to tell me, do I want to sit down? Do I want to stand up? Should I lie down? Should I walk around? Should I pace in my practice? Let your body tell you how it wants to be in practice. And of course, if your body says, nope, I can't deal with this, and of course that's an expression of trauma, disassociation, then you want to actually turn your attention away from the body into a sensation or to an experience that feels very neutral. Like turning your attention to the ground under you, turning your attention to something that feels solid around you. So you have those options, but we'll continue just working with the body. And so once your body has kind of settled into this position that it wishes to be in, I invite you just to shift your attention down to the seat. I invite you to notice the sensation of your body resting on the seat. And I wonder if you can allow the seat to hold you. Can you surrender to the seat? And if your feet are on the floor, or if you're sitting on a cushion and feeling the floor under you, the floor is an expression of the ground, of the earth, of the land. The earth is always holding us. It has always held us. And as the earth is holding us, the earth is loving us. Let the earth love you. Let the earth accept you and take care of you. And turning your attention now to the breath, noticing the in breath and the out breath. And I invite you to begin to slow the breath down. Breathing in and out of the nose, particularly if you feel really anxious or activated. If you're feeling calm, you can breathe into the nose and out of the mouth. But as you inhale, I encourage you to count to 4. So extending the inhale over 4 seconds. And as you exhale, extending the exhale over a course of 7 seconds. And it's going to really deepen the breath, really slow the breath down, and really allow the breath to get into the body. And as you're exhaling, imagine that you're just releasing any tension, any tightness, anxiety, even fear out of the body. And as you release that energy into the space around you, and just imagine that the space around you and the spaciousness, the emptiness around us just dissolves that energy that has been uncomfortable for us. As soon as it leaves the body, it dissolves into emptiness. So let the emptiness have these things that we struggle with. Make an offering of our discomfort to the emptiness. And so just stepping into the space the spaciousness, and allowing everything to be held by this spaciousness, even our fear. We can hold space for anything. Holding space simply means that we allow something to be in our experience and we choose not to react. And in choosing not to react, we're actually making a choice to give rise to the experience of wisdom or clarity. This is where liberation begins, in the space of non-reacting. We can even take another step to gaze into the nature of whatever we're holding space for. As we gaze deeply, developing our practice of insight, our gaze reveals that all the material in our mind is simply an expression of our minds, and that we can simply rest our awareness within the nature of any material in our mind. And that's the same as resting our awareness within the nature of our minds. So slowly we begin to turn our minds back to the seat, back to the weight of our bodies, the sensation of being held by the seat. Shift our attention back to the earth under us. And we generate this energy of gratitude for the earth, for holding us. We send that energy of gratitude down into the earth. And as our gratitude touches the earth, we bless the earth. In the same way the earth has blessed us our whole lives by holding us and loving us. As we touch the earth is touching us. So slowly we begin to come back into the space. We begin to make gentle movements, opening our eyes if our eyes have been closed. Taking a few deep breaths, inhaling deeply, exhaling out of every whole pore in our bodies, getting rid and exhausting all of this stale old prana, life force energy in our bodies. We just let it go with the out breath, with the exhale. Okay, so we'll have questions and answers. Oh, I forgot to ring the bell to say that this is like the end of the meditation. I'll do that now. It's actually chimes. Okay, name that tune. All right. Okay.
So, if anyone, thank you so much for the talk and the practice.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone has any questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself, or if you want to type your question in the chat, that's also acceptable. So I'll ask my question. You mentioned at some point that we should find more ways to seek refuge. And I just wanted to see if you could just speak to that a little more.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, I think that we have to, I think this is a time where we are being called to be in refuge. And when I say refuge, we're being called to be taken care of by other sources, other beings, if you will. I think there's this tendency for us to believe that we're individuals, that we can work things out on our own, that we don't need anyone else, that we can just give us some time, we'll figure it out on our own. And that's actually, you know, what has gotten us into the situation. It's gotten us into the violence and the harm. To work through ego fixation, we enter into the profound practice of surrendering. You know, we enter into being taken care of by others. You know, when I say others, I mean teachers or guides, I also mean deities, spirits, gods. We have to find ways to be cared for, in order to remind us that we're part of something larger, that we're interconnected, we're interdependent. Um, of course, this source of refuge can be nature, it can be the earth. In Buddhism, we have the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. You can add more sources of refuge. And of course, the Buddha represents the teacher, the Dharma represents truth, wisdom. The Sangha represents community or collective. And you ask yourself, what else do you need beyond that? That's so important for us right now. We need community right now. We need to understand that, you know, that to get through, it's going to be the work of working together, not separately or not against one another. That's what I mean by that.
Thank you. And then another question, like as you speak to community, one of the ways that many of us probably find refuge is through our sanghas.
Mm-hmm.
But in a sangha where you're the only Black person or person of color, or only Indigenous person, like how do you sit with like the love and the rage that comes up through those experiences?
Well, I think that's something that many people experience, and I think that one thing is to take refuge in ourselves, that we're actually the ones who are caring for us, and sanghas where we feel marginalized or erased. And of course, I always say that, like, the other option is to actually leave, that you're maybe actually experiencing more psychic violence that is useful for you. You're actually probably experiencing more psychic violence than, liberation from the practices that are being offered, in the Sangha. There's no, that's out of the balance. And I think we keep going back to places that hurt us because we feel as if we have no other place to go. And I experienced that early in my practice. I left my Sangha, my first Sangha, because I was the only person of color there, and I felt completely excluded and marginalized and unseen, and I was so fortunate that a teacher reminded me that I had the option to get the hell out of there. And I took that option, because that's what it meant to take refuge in myself. When I take refuge in myself, I take refuge in how I feel about things and my perspective. And when I look around after taking that refuge and say, you know what, I'm really being hurt in this space, I say, you know what, then it's time for me to get the hell out of here. And then I have to create sangha for myself, and sometimes I have to be sangha-less. It's we have to wander out in the desert sometimes until we find our people. But I think it's worth it, to find our people. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'll ask just one more question.
Okay.
Obviously, the two books are totally different, Radical Dharma and the book you have coming out soon. And I guess my question is what space were you in when you wrote Radical Dharma versus the space you're in right now?
Yeah. I think with Radical Dharma, it was the question that I had was, what is my role as a Black Dharma teacher in the movement for Black lives? And who am I responsible for? Who do I owe what to? And I was trying to answer those questions, and I wanted to not necessarily offer these answers for everyone else to read. The answers that I offer were first and foremost for myself. In my work in the book, I was working through a process, that I, wrote down and just invited other people to witness, and in terms of dialogue, Reverend Angel and I started this process of trying to figure out these questions on our own in our friendship. and that led into a public dialogue, that Yasmin later joined, and that became Radical Dharma. So the book was a process for me around identity and locations, um, and what my responsibility was in this location, for folks, and yeah, it was the conversation was around race and love and freedom and liberation, you know. With Love and Rage, so this is my conversation solely. So this is no one, this is my book. And this is a conversation that I'm having with myself about what it means to live in this Trump era, you know, which I also call like the apocalyptic era. Now that no, Trump didn't like bring about the apocalypse. He's a symptom of the apocalypse. So what does it mean to live in the apocalypse? What does it mean to take some of these really basic Dharma teachings and bring them into this really direct, honest, direct conversation with the things that everyone's struggling with: anger, rage, love, desire, sex, trauma, brokenheartedness, self-care. How do we actually learn how to be in a really honest, open relationship with the anger and the rage? And how do we use love to do that? And so that question was for me, but that question was a question that so many people were asking me, particularly right after the elections. And I remember, November, December 2016, like directly after, where people were so stunned and numb. And then the questions, at teachings, that I would give would be like, what do I do with this? Like, what do I do with this fear, hopelessness, despair, rage, anger? It felt overwhelming for people. Um, and when you read the book, the prologue to the book is this actually a real story where Reverend Angel and I were giving a talk a couple of years ago at Columbia Law School. And it was about mindfulness and race. And then there was a young Black man there who asked a question about, what do you do with the anger? And that was like the last question. That was like when I finally began to understand that maybe I needed to write a book about anger, because I was tired. It wasn't I was tired of answering that question. I was like, I after that question, I just felt like I needed to really get into this seriously instead of giving like a 2 or 3 minute answer and then going about my business. I just needed to just put this out there and really explore the complexity of anger. And when you read Love and Rage, the Love and Rage is complex. It's simple, but also very complex. I think that it's not just about how to deal with anger. It's actually about, let's actually feel anger. Let's explore anger. Let's talk about the hurt, the woundedness beneath the anger. And it's written for activists, for Black folks in particular, and queer folks. And I want, it's a lot of like work around Blackness and anger, about transhistorical trauma, the Middle Passage, intergenerational trauma, racial violence, and it goes much more deeper than we do in Radical Dharma, you know. Um, so yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Lama Rod? Okay, go ahead and wrap us up for today. Again, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Lama Rod, and thank you everyone for joining us live and for people who are tuning in to the recording. Just a quick reminder that we will not have talks on March 4th and March 11th, but you can join us on March 18th for our next talk with Angie Cho. And she'll be giving a talk entitled Teachings on Indecision from the Flower World. And so we'll be able to tune into that. And you can check out the weekly Dharma Gathering page for a link to register for that talk if you're interested in joining us. And just want to throw out a reminder to consider becoming a subscriber to Weekly Dharma Gathering if you're not already. We have a 7-day free trial that you can find on our website. Please be sure to spread the word to your friends. In addition, if you use social media, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at Weekly Dharma and Facebook at Weekly Dharma Gathering. Thank you again for tonight's talk. Very excited about your book.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah.